Waves Radio with Grace Sharkey, your only place for transportation and freight market news with data affecting you and your business. Freight Waves Drive Time starts right now here on Road Dog Trucking Radio.
Back, everyone, to Freightways Drive Time. I am Grace Sharkey, and we're getting into, of course, National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. Thank you, all you drivers, and also that Road Dog Trucking news you just heard as well is also brought to you by XVO. Thank you, XVO, for your, of course, support here at Sirius XM. And that's not all. Of course, for everyone, all those good old Road Dog listeners out there, tomorrow we got some fun stuff happening for you. We have a special broadcast of Road Dog Live with Casey Phillips. He'll be at the Landstar's BCO Appreciation Days in Durant, Oklahoma, talking with Landstar leadership and Landstar owner-operators, discussing all things trucking and, of course, celebrating the drivers and much, much more. That is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, again, on this channel, Road Dog Trucking, channel 146. Or, of course, if you have the SiriusXM app, that's the best way to listen to it. And for all the fleet managers out there listening, I got some interesting stats this week as well from truckstop.com, who we had on the show last week. They said actually 72% of their trucking respondents listen to music on the road. A third of them actually love country music, and over 20% of them listen to bands, rock bands in particular, like AC/DC and Metallica. Which means you got to make sure your drivers have something nice to listen to. And of course, you can get all of that here at SiriusXM. If you want to listen to all of those wonderful ad-free music, plus sports, news, talk, comedy, all that on SiriusXM. You can hear it for just $5 a month for your drivers. Sign up at SiriusXMFleet.com. Again, we have a special day ahead of us today. I wanted to bring on some brokers, actually. You're like, oh, Grace, here you go. Here's this broker girl goes again, bringing on brokers during Truck Driver Appreciation Week. Well, there's a reason for it, because I know the finger is pointed at us most of the time when it comes to how we are building relationships with our carriers, how we're representing carriers, right? Sometimes I think that gets kind of pushed aside. Of course, we represent shippers to the carriers, but at the end of the day, we represent both sides and should be representing both sides equally. So I thought today I wanted to bring on two special guests in particular who are out there building good core relationships with carriers, and two wonderful women in logistics as well. And we're going to dive into that here. We have two different guests for the first half and the second half. We're going to question them on why the carrier relationships and how they're building that culture in particular. And here for the first half of this show, I'm very excited to introduce you to a new guest, VP of Carrier Sales over at Sheer Logistics. Now, we've had Sheer Logistics on the show before, but we haven't had this incredible woman in logistics, Dana Kantor. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Grace. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be here, especially this week with Truck Driver Appreciation Week. I really want to start off by thanking truck drivers for all their sacrifices and hard work and unwavering commitment to moving freight, not only on behalf of Sheer's customers, but truly across America as well.
Hey, I love it. And we'll get into, of course, the work that you're doing at Sheer. But first, I want to ask you about yourself. My favorite thing about this show is I get to meet so many different people in the space, and we all have interesting stories of how we got into the roles that we're at today. So, Dana, tell us about yourself and what got you into your logistics career.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you'll find, or you have, on your show, you've brought it about too. I kind of fell into the industry, came out of college looking for sales experience, and found myself at a brokerage. And my first job was as a carrier sales rep at 22 years old. Worked there for a couple years, and then spent following 11 years at a large, well-known logistics company, largely on the carrier side. But I did spend several years doing shipper ops and then sales as well. And I've been at Cargo Barn, and that was acquired by Sheer Logistics this year in February since 2021.
I was wondering because Sheer is, I don't want to say a new endeavor, but a recent endeavor that I've got the chance to cover, and along with the Barn News as well. So happy to see that's how you made your way to the company. And I'm interested. So you started on the carrier side of things, and what was that? I personally, I have a kind of weird story, more of like a startup story. So I kind of had to dive into both at the same time. But what was that like starting in the carrier side, especially as like a just a consumer and learning about this industry from the carrier's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at the first company I worked for, when you were hired, you didn't know if you were going to go onto the sales side of the organization or the carrier side organization. And throughout the training process, it was a selection that was made for you. And I remember initially being kind of disappointed. It seemed a little more glamorous,
Yeah, be
maybe on the
honest.
customer side,
Yeah,
right? But
for
truly,
sure.
at the time, it was absolutely the right thing for me. It was, the instant gratification of covering loads one by one, um, and the pace, talking to carriers, talking to drivers was so uh, much more fulfilling than I realized it would be. And of course, solving the problems that come up day to day, I think was really what kept me going in those first few years.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. I think especially in my experience, I almost learned the industry more from the carrier's perspective, especially I can from a startup, right? Our MC was so young and so new that like I had to really persuade drivers to take loads from us. So it was like the opposite of kind of the market that we've experienced, where I'm like begging people to work for me and trying to learn the ins and outs and what matters most to them. And I think sometimes you see this a lot at brokerages where you kind of start in that space and then you go into sales because it's easier to sell knowing, right, like the outcome of what that load experience is going to be for a carrier too. And so I think it's interesting to see not only your growth, but of course other people's growth in this space. And now going into this VP of carrier sales, how do you lead a more positive carrier relationship culture in the work that you're doing, right? Because I'm sure you've got people underneath you who are dealing with frustrating scenarios. How do you make sure that these individuals are being sure to think about what it's like to be a carrier in their shoes, in their seat, legitimately, and making sure that that experience that they leave with Sheer is positive?
Yeah, it's something we talk about quite a bit from the day um, reps walk through either our virtual or physical doors. Um, that
Yeah.
we treat our carriers like their customers, and we want our customers' experience to be that with good customer service. So it's really going both directions, the customer service aspect, and um, caring about the feedback we get from carriers. I read any review. I take endless phone calls for situations that occur, whether it's, shipper fault or scheduling errors. I will talk to carriers about all of that because it's such a priority to me to make sure that the experience when working with us in the end is a good one. And that is, an example that I'm able to set for our team as we continue to grow and expand our network. I think,
Yeah, I think that's I'll go for it. No, you're good. Keep
oh
going.
no, I was just going to say, I think it's really, you know, a couple of things. I think if you talk to any of the reps in my group, they would, maybe make fun of that I say or that they hear often is you get more bees with honey. And we're here to create a surprise free
Yes.
environment for our customers. And that's what it's about, right? It's, treat people the way you
Yeah.
want to be treated, take care of them, lead with, understanding and kindness when you have a conversation, and try to get as much information ahead of time as possible. We're not going to prevent the problems, but hopefully we can communicate them
Yes.
proactively.
100%. I mean, I think that's whenever I've working the floor and running into like big carrier issues, right, where like people are really pissed and phone calls are being made, I've always like tracked those scenarios back down to, oh, you didn't tell the carrier that they're going to be probably unloading for 4 hours, or you didn't
Mhm.
even bother to ask
Totally.
that, or you didn't even check to see if appointments need to be made. And there's it's at the end of the day, that is like quite literally our job. The driver doesn't need us if we aren't doing those things. And so I'm happy
Absolutely.
to see that, yeah, you're leading with that. And, I do want to say as well, congratulations to you. I have been told that you have actually been recognized as a woman in supply chain, a trailblazing woman in supply chain, after receiving the Trailblazer Award from the Woman in Supply Chain group as well. So happy, congrats to you on that. I know it's we're seeing those awards starting to go out here, and it's I think especially for yourself, something that you're probably really proud of. And I can say as a good friend of Sarah Barnes Humphrey as well, it's really great to see that you've achieved this. So congratulations on that too.
Oh, thank you so much. It is really nice to be recognized, but what really has taken me aback is just seeing the women that I've been recognized alongside of and their accomplishments. It's honestly kind of fuels my fire a little bit, and you know, also kind of makes me
Yeah.
hopeful to get more women to join the industry with us. It's I think when you get started, it's a little bit tough. We are still pretty well outnumbered, but I've had almost exclusively great experiences, and hopefully, in the position I'm in now, can offer the same support for women coming through.
Yeah, I mean, you're up right there with women from Uber Freight, from Alta. I love that. Or from Alta. And RM Logistics, some big players out there as well. So, congratulations to you. And I want to take a quick break here. And when we get back, we're going to put her a little bit underneath the hot seat. And we're going to dive into the biggest problems that drivers end up getting or running into throughout their travels as well. And we're going to ask her how she fixes these, how she gets around them, and then give you a chance to shout out some carriers as well. If anyone has any thoughts for Dana, give us a call, 8888 Road Dog, or 888-876-2336.
Welcome back to Freight Waves Radio with Grace Sharkey.
Welcome back, everyone, to Freight Waves Drive Time. I'm Grace Sharkey, and we are here celebrating drivers. Thank you, of course. I like to thank you guys all year round, but we're for drivers in particular. I'm putting some brokers on the hot seat, especially those in the carrier sales arena. And we have with us here for the first half of the show, Dana Kantor, VP of Carrier Sales at Sheer Logistics. And now, Dana, I want to put you on the hot seat a little bit and see how you're working these issues that drivers hate the most. Now, the first one I want to get into, and it's good old detention, right? We got you're sitting there, you're seeing these reps going back and forth, trying to figure out how to, of course, give drivers detention. How do you work around detention as an issue as a whole? And do you feel like you're able to understand where the drivers are coming from as why this is such a big deal to them?
Absolutely. We all, anyone that's working is getting paid for their time, right? So
Yeah.
detention is a serious suck on drivers' time from, personally, professionally, hours of service, preventing them from getting to their next load, all of it. And so I absolutely believe wholeheartedly to my core in compensation of that. you know, but of course there has to be parameters, right? There has to be rules in place to make it fair for all parties involved. So I think when it comes to detention, it's, really good communication, documentation, um, and, setting the table from the beginning on, how we're going to work together. So, and that starts internally as a company, what we, have as our baseline, and when we're going to pay attention, when we wouldn't, and why that is. We can have that conversation with our carriers, make sure it's even in some cases part of certain contracts, depending on the customers. And then, what are our expectations to ensure that we can get compensation for those drivers? And for me, it's as simple as getting, time in, time out, written on paperwork. And what I really love to see is, some ELD tracking via, whether it's
True.
MacroPoint or Trucker Tools or a Samsara link, whatever it may be, that's, what I need to bring to my customer and get, them to pay for it. But even in cases where our customers won't pay, that doesn't mean we won't. I really believe also in taking care of drivers for their time. As long as it's,
Yeah.
on the up and up, we can't be late for appointments or leave and come back or do all these things. But if everything lines up and is according to, how the table was set, as I said before, Raycon's coming right their way with that, reasonable amount of detention.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember getting a chat with a driver once at I think it was at Matt's, to be honest with you, and they're talking about like if there's a way to like force like detention, and I kind of laugh because as fragmented as the industry is, like we would have to have a officer like standing outside of every single shipping facility in the world in order to have that done. But I think detention, where it really like you touched on, it stems from is communication, and something you talked about earlier is like is doing the due diligence. I used to have this customer who um it would the load would take a while. Like long story short, someone would have to drive to the facility to unload. So if you didn't call ahead of time and give them at least like a 2 hour window
Right.
of when you would be there, you'd usually end up waiting an extra hour and a half for them to come out and unload you. And for me, I remember like I would also call that person and let them know what time, and I would have the driver call, and I rarely ran into detention issues, but if I did, it was usually because the driver didn't call to give them that window. And so like explaining that, and I think what's even better is like talk about the human side of this industry is like picking up the phone, right, and telling them like these processes, not just like hiding it in rate confirmation notes, but like having that conversation goes a really long way. So I love that you are positive, but also stern. You got to be stern. Sorry, drivers, but you have to be at some point, right? And the same if you feel
Absolutely.
like yeah, 100%. That's hey, when you're a middleman, we take that sternness from both sides of the industry. I'm sure you know. Now, here's a fun question. Let's say you were a driver and you were to go out there and take a driving position. What type of trailer do you think you would haul, and what type of products do you think that you would find yourself moving as well? Oh, can you hear me?
I
Oh,
would.
there you go. Nice.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Man, thinking about that's hilarious. First of all, I'm in Atlanta now, but for many years I was in downtown Chicago and really barely drove. I
Woo.
felt like I had to relearn how to drive when I moved to Atlanta. So I'm kind of like a new driver. So when I think about that, I think the best position on the road for me would have to be a trailer jockey at a drop facility, because no one would actually want me to be on the open road. So
I
I
love that. That's honesty.
otherwise a sprinter. I think just I'll just be in the minivan.
No, I see. I was thinking about this prior to even asking you, and I was thinking the same thing. Maybe I'd be a cargo van driver, but I don't like the stopping and going. I am like one of my favorite things to do is to drive to the upper lower peninsula when I can, and that's a nice like 4 hour drive and scenery. So I think I would be like a long haul flatbed driver in my world, so I could see the
Okay.
scenes, maybe get some cool freight, get some escort drivers with me, and have a good
Yeah.
time. So,
But the
I
flatbed, there's a lot of manual work there. Are you prepared for that? You have to tarp, chain, all of that.
Maybe in this scenario, I'm a team driver actually, and my husband, who doesn't exist, is securing it all for me. That's the spot I'm looking for, guys out there. I'm looking for someone to strap down all that work on that flatbed. Uh,
That is awesome.
for yeah, of course. Hey, it's a ladies' night. We're gonna talk about this stuff. So, here's another one for you as well. Now, of course, you're VP of carrier sales. I'm sure there's a lot of carriers you're working with, but it is time for us to honor some drivers out there too. Is there any carriers in particular that you want to give a shout out to, or anyone out there that is has really stuck up for you, or stuck up for Sheer in a moment of need as a driver?
Oh, wow. I think we work with so many awesome carriers and drivers. I think it would be really, really difficult to single one out. But I would love to give a shout out, if he's listening, to my old friend Laredo, who was an owner operator I worked with probably, gosh, like 15 years ago when I was still booking trucks myself. He did runs for me between Nashville and Laredo. And how I met him was that my dad at the time was a GM at a pilot, and he was a
Oh
really
wow.
nice guy. And my dad was a really talkative guy, and they got to know each other as Laredo, it was a nickname, was a regular. And he gave him my card, and I actually had runs that worked out. And he taught me a lot about the industry. He'd always, also he was always, visiting. A lot of truck drivers that I've talked to over the years kind of stop at the same places if they can. And so,
Yeah.
he built a relationship with my dad, and then we had a relationship as well. I had pretty regular runs for him, and he taught me a lot. When I would have questions, I would even call him sometimes and ask. And I think, that's a lot of how I learned in the industry, was asking carriers, what do they think is right? Especially when it didn't have to do with a load that we were partnered on, right? There was kind
Interesting.
of removing that um, trying to earn a buck scenario, and really leaning on
Yeah.
the relationship to, like, teach me why I'm wrong in this scenario, or teach me what I should do differently, or how can I explain this so that the customer will improve the shipper, or all of those things. Have learned so much from drivers and, carrier leadership as well.
That's awesome. That's a really interesting take as well. You're right. I mean, there's I feel like when I left brokerage and doing what I do now, the people that I actually talk to the most are the carrier relationships that I built at that opportunity, than probably some of the people even in the office, to be honest with you. So, you do learn so much from them, and like I always it's weird to me, I just think carriers in particular, and maybe it's because they're in the cab all day, are like some of the most open people about the work that they do, and the achievements that they have, and just I've never met a driver who's like, no, I don't want to help you. Like they always want to educate and help spread awareness on how people could do their jobs better in this industry. So yeah, like I love that. People out there listening, like this week, maybe just like grab a coffee and talk with a driver. There was we covered back when Canada was closed down, just kind of the issues at the border, especially here in Michigan. And one of my favorite experiences covering that was just literally sitting with a driver at a Love's, I want to say it was, over in the east side of Michigan, and listening to him talk about what that experience dealing with COVID and everything was like. And so I agree. We just need to have some normal conversations and not always have to have a buck behind it. You're 100% right. Now, for the rest of
Absolutely.
the week, yeah, of course. Dana, for you, how are you celebrating the rest of Appreciation Week, and how are the people working with you doing it as well?
Yeah, so this is something that we've been talking about for, you know, actually a couple months, making sure that everyone in our organization is aware of, Driver Appreciation Week and any interaction we have with carriers, whether it's billing, accounting, on the, dispatch side, on the carrier rep, that we're making sure the first thing that we do is, thank you, and just, putting out there as, you know, personally as possible in those one-on-one conversations, that we appreciate the work and recognize that, drivers are really the backbone of our entire economy. I mean, most people in America, I think we can say, are going out and buying all of the things that they need and want. And all of that was on a truck. Most people aren't growing their own food or, making their own clothes or any of those things. And so that means everything that we all touch is on a truck. And we need to appreciate, how it got there.
Yeah. We don't need a pandemic to remind us, right? We just need a week and
Oh,
to remember
man.
throughout the year.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Dana, before I let you go, where can people go to learn more about Sheer Logistics and reach out to you as well?
Absolutely. Sheerlogistics.com is our website. And of course, anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. And we'd love to work with any new carriers and, of course, customers as well.
Love it. Thank you so much. Congratulations on your award as well. Trailblazer you are. And for our audience, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got another wonderful representative joining us from Open Road Global. If you have any questions, give us a call, 8888 Road Dog or 888-876-2336.